Whispers on Steel. Book 1 of The Railway Inheritance. Written by Melody Gilley. Chapter 15. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across whispering pines, the light filtering through the stained glass of the drawing room in fractured patterns of amber and crimson. Sonya stood before the mirror in Elizabeth's old bedroom, fingers tracing her mother's silver pendant at her throat. The necklace was the only piece of Helena she had brought across the Atlantic, having no idea that a few short weeks after boarding that ship to Yorkshire, she would be standing in the home of her mother's past, effectively under Sullivan's protective custody. She smoothed the borrowed navy dress with its high neckline and slightly outdated cut, one of Elizabeth's that Sullivan had found preserved in a cedar chest. The irony wasn't lost on her, draped in the clothes of a ghost to meet the man who might have orchestrated the attack on the uncle she'd only just met for the first time since arriving in Yorkshire. Armor of sorts, though not of her choosing. Morrison wouldn't see her as the naive American girl who had stumbled into Yorkshire with a single suitcase and vague hopes of understanding her mother's secrets. Not anymore. A soft knock at the door. Sullivan entered without waiting for her response, a habit she might have found presumptuous weeks ago. Now, she merely turned to face him. "He's arrived," Sullivan said, his voice measured. He had traded the shirt sleeves for a tailored charcoal suit, his hair neatly combed back. Only the slight reddening across his knuckles, still healing from the window, betrayed any hint of the tempestuous man from the study. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready since I found my mother's journal," Sonya replied, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "The question is, are you?" A slight twitch at the corner of Sullivan's mouth, not quite a smile. Morrison has always underestimated the consequences of his actions. Today will be enlightening. They descended the grand staircase together, not touching but close enough that their shadows merged on the wall beside them. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed 3 o'clock, punctuating each step with the weight of inevitability. James Morrison waited in the drawing room, standing rather than seated, examining a small porcelain figurine from the mantelpiece. He was older than Sonya had pictured, mid-60s perhaps, but carried himself with the straight-backed posture of a much younger man, eyes pale and watchful. He wore wealth with the comfortable indifference of someone born to it. "Miss Matthews," he said, placing the figurine back with careful precision. His voice carried the polished edges of Oxford, but beneath it, something rougher. "What a pleasure to finally meet Gregory's niece." "Mr. Morrison," Sonya acknowledged, not offering her hand. "I believe we both know I'm more than just Gregory's niece." Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Directness. How refreshing. He gestured to the leather-bound ledger on the side table. "Please, both of you, sit." Sullivan guided Sonya to the love seat while taking the armchair adjacent, maintaining a clear sightline to Morrison, who settled into the wingback chair across from them. The arrangement felt choreographed, each position calculated. "I trust your stay at Whispering Pines has been informative," Morrison said, reaching for the ledger. "Sullivan has always been an excellent host. The house has revealed its secrets gradually," Sonya replied, "as has its master." Sullivan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly at the word master, but he remained silent, watching Morrison with the careful attention of a chess player. "I believe in transparency, Miss Matthews," Morrison said, opening the ledger. "Something your Uncle Gregory and I disagree on fundamentally." He turned the book toward her. On the first page, a black and white photograph, 7-year-old Sonya in Central Park, ice cream dripping down her wrist, her mother's hand visible at the edge of the frame. "This is," Sonya began, but Morrison turned to the next page. 10-year-old Sonya outside her school in Manhattan. 14-year-old Sonya at a piano recital. 18-year-old Sonya in her graduation cap and gown. Each photo was perfectly preserved and meticulously dated. Her life, catalogued by an invisible observer. "You've been watching us for all of these years," she said, her voice steady despite the chills spreading through her chest. Keeping tabs, Morrison corrected. A necessary precaution given the circumstances. The circumstances being that I'm Helena's daughter. Sonya kept her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Her mother's silver pendant cool against her skin. Or is it that I'm yours? The silence that followed felt like the moment between lightning and thunder. Morrison's expression remained unchanged, but something shifted in the air between them. You've done your research, he finally said. Impressive for someone who only learned of Yorkshire's existence a month ago. It wasn't difficult, Sonya countered. Railway records, property deeds, birth certificates. They're all public information if you know where to look. Even for an American who stepped off a ship just weeks ago, meeting an uncle she'd never known before. Morrison chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. And that, Miss Matthews, is precisely my point. Information is available to those who seek it, yes, but ordinary people don't seek. They don't risk the comfort of their ignorance. He closed the ledger with a soft thud. They don't board transatlantic voyages based on cryptic letters from estranged uncles. Morrison's gaze never leaving Sonya, though I wonder if this bold inspector considers what might have happened to his niece, summoning her across an ocean into this situation. A niece he'd never even met before she arrived in Yorkshire. Why would he place you in such danger, I wonder? Unless I was bait, Sonya finished. The realization settled over her like falling ash. He knew you'd surface if I started asking questions. The most logical explanation, Morrison agreed. Gregory has always been willing to sacrifice pawns, even family pawns he barely knows. Unlike you. Sullivan's voice carried a dangerous edge. Morrison smiled thinly. I protect my investments, von Vogel. You of all people should understand that. The clock ticked in the silence that followed. Outside, the distant rumble of thunder promised another Yorkshire storm. What happens now? Sonya finally asked, her fingers unconsciously rising to her mother's pendant. Now that I've served my purpose as bait, now that we're all here with our cards on the table, Morrison stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate movements. That, my dear, depends entirely on you. He walked to the window, looking out at the darkening grounds of Whispering Pines. You have two choices before you. The first is simple: return to New York, book passage on the next ship home, resume your position at Harrison & Sons, live the life Helena crafted for you in blissful ignorance of railway ledgers and family legacies. I will ensure your comfortable continuation. Your mother managed 25 years of such peace after fleeing these shores. You could have 50 more. And the second option? Sullivan asked when Sonya remained silent. Morrison turned, his expression unreadable in the fading light. The second is considerably more complex. He removed an envelope from his inside pocket and placed it on the table between them. I find myself in need of someone with your particular heritage. Someone who can move between worlds as easily as trains move between stations. You want to employ me, Sonya said, not touching the envelope. I want to partner with you, Morrison corrected. The Cold War has created opportunities that Sebastian could never have imagined. Opportunities that require both von Vogel railway expertise and Matthew's determination. And if I refuse both options? Sonya asked. Lightning flashed, illuminating Morrison's face in stark white for an instant. There is no third option, Miss Matthews. Not anymore. He reached into his pocket again and withdrew a small brass key, placing it beside the envelope. This opens a safety deposit box at Yorkshire National Bank. Inside is everything you need to know about your father. Sonia's heart hammered against her ribs. You just said. I said many things, Morrison interrupted, retrieving his hat from the side table. The contents of that box will clarify which of them were true. He nodded to Sullivan. I'll expect your decision by Friday, both of you. The future of the von Vogel line depends on it. With that, he strode from the room, leaving Sonya and Sullivan staring at the envelope and key gleaming on the table between them. Two small objects that suddenly carried the weight of generations. The brass key caught the last light of day, winking like a conspirator. The front door closed with a hollow finality as Morrison departed. For several moments, neither Sonya nor Sullivan moved, the brass key and envelope lying between them like unexploded ordnance. "He's lying," Sullivan said finally, his voice unnervingly calm. "About what specifically, I'm not certain, but Morrison never offers choices without traps hidden within them." Sonya reached for the key, but Sullivan's hand shot out, closing over hers. His touch was cool, his grip precise, neither comforting nor threatening, simply containing. "Not yet," he said. His eyes, so focused during Morrison's visit, had taken on a distant quality, as though listening to something beyond the room's confines. From somewhere deep within the house, a distinct sound echoed down the corridor. A woman's soft laughter, followed by what sounded like a man's heavy footsteps. Sonya tensed, but Sullivan merely tilted his head, a faint smile playing at his lips. Always so punctual, Sullivan said not to Sonya, but to the empty air. The laughter came again, gentler this time, as if tempering the harsh sound of footsteps that followed. "You hear them too?" Sonya asked, her fingers still trapped beneath Sullivan's hand. "Hear them? I speak with them almost nightly." Sullivan released Sonya's hand abruptly, rising from his seat with fluid grace. "Elizabeth tries to moderate my ambitions with her gentle wisdom, while Sebastian fuels them with his relentless drive. Elizabeth brings the balance this house needs. She always understood necessity without sacrificing humanity." He crossed to the sideboard and poured 2 fingers of whiskey, his movements so measured they bordered on mechanical. "Morrison thinks himself the chess master in all this," Sullivan continued, swirling the amber liquid. "He doesn't realize the board was tilted long before he placed his first pawn." The certainty in his voice chilled Sonya more than any ghost ever could. "What do you mean?" Sullivan smiled that not quite smile again, then suddenly slammed his glass down. Whiskey sloshed over the rim as he gripped the edge of the sideboard, knuckles whitening. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped an octave, resonating with barely contained fury. "I've waited years, watching him dismantle everything Sebastian built, twist it into his smuggling empire, pretend he's serving some greater geopolitical purpose." Sullivan overturned the sideboard with a violent crash, bottles shattering across the hardwood floor, his face transforming into something almost unrecognizable, sharper, wilder, reminiscent of the portrait of Sebastian that hung in the main hall. Sonya flinched, rising halfway from her seat. Sullivan, just as suddenly as the outburst began, it ceased. Sullivan straightened, adjusted his tie, and turned back to her with perfect composure, as though the wreckage at his feet didn't exist. "My apologies for the display," he said, voice returned to its customary measured tone. "Sometimes Sebastian's rage manifests through me. Elizabeth tries to balance it, but her calm voice is often drowned out by his passion, an unfortunate side effect of our conversations." Sonya remained half-standing, poised between fight and flight, her mother's pendant cold against her racing pulse. "You're not well," she said quietly. "I'm precisely as well as Whispering Pines requires me to be," Sullivan replied, stepping carefully over broken glass to retrieve something from behind the fallen sideboard. "This house doesn't tolerate conventional sanity. You'll discover that yourself, should you stay." He emerged with a worn leather case, which he placed on the table beside Morrison's envelope. From it, he withdrew a compact shortwave radio. "What are you doing?" Sonya asked. Adjusting the board, Sullivan began turning dials with practiced precision. "Morrison believes he's offering you a choice between ignorant safety and dangerous knowledge. He fails to understand that you were never merely a pawn." The radio crackled with static before Sullivan found his frequency. He leaned close to the microphone and spoke rapidly in what sounded like a mixture of German and code. "Nachtigall bestätigt. Paket bereit für Transit. Petrov Protocol initiieren." He switched off the radio before Sonya could ask for a translation. "Nightingale confirmed. The package is ready for transit." "Initiate Petrov protocol," he said, answering her unasked question. "An old railway communication system Sebastian developed during the war. Still useful for reaching certain vessels in the North Sea. You're a smuggler, just like Morrison." Sonya's accusation hung in the air. "I am nothing like Morrison," Sullivan replied, a dangerous edge returning to his voice. "Morrison serves himself while pretending to serve countries. I serve the railway, the connections between places that political borders try to sever." He replaced the radio in its case with meticulous care. "I've spent 20 years building a network across both sides of the Iron Curtain, positioning agents loyal not to East or West, but to the flow of information itself. Morrison believes he controls these lines, but they've been mine since Elizabeth showed me the hidden platform beneath this house when I was 12 years old. And now, with Petrov's North Sea operations, we can create a network neither side can touch." Sonya stared at him, trying to reconcile the perfectly poised businessman with the man who had just destroyed the sideboard in a fit of rage, the pragmatic railway executive with the man who claimed to speak with ghosts. "And now you want me to ... what? Join your network? Help you overthrow Morrison? I want you to become what your mother never dared to be, a true player in this game, not merely someone else's piece to be moved." Sullivan walked to the window, his silhouette outlined against the gathering dusk. "Morrison offered you a safety deposit box with answers about your father. I'm offering you the chance to reshape the questions entirely." Elizabeth's gentle laughter and Sebastian's heavier footsteps echoed once more, neither near nor far this time, but seemingly from all around them. Sullivan didn't react, but Sonya noticed his reflection in the window glass, his lips moving silently, as though mediating an argument between voices only he could hear, his posture alternating between Elizabeth's composed stance and Sebastian's more aggressive bearing. Sullivan moved swiftly from the window to kneeling in front of Sonya. His eyes glimmered with an emotion that, after weeks of maintaining a composed, professional appearance, baffled Sonya. "Tomorrow morning, a car will arrive to take you to the railway station," he continued, turning back to face her. "You can return to New York, as Morrison suggested, or you can come with me to meet Petrov at the Dover crossing. There's a ship departing for Calais at 4 in the morning. From there, we travel north to his flagship in the North Sea, where the real negotiations happen." "East? You mean beyond the curtain?" "Yes, where Morrison's photographs end and the true power of the von Vogel line begins." Sullivan's voice lowered. "There's a man, Alexei Petrov, Russian by birth, but loyal to no nation. He controls most of the North Sea shipping routes now, the veins that connect east and west. Morrison thinks the railways are the prize, but they're merely the path to the greater asset, access to Petrov's fleet." He picked up the brass key and pressed it into her palm, closing her fingers around it. "The safety deposit box will still be there when we return. If we return," the implications hung in the air between them. East meant danger. East meant the unknown territory of Soviet influence. East meant crossing boundaries few Westerners dared traverse. "Think carefully. Sonya Matthews." Sullivan's eyes held hers, intensity radiating from him in almost palpable waves. "Morrison isn't the only player in this game. The von Vogel lines have always been valuable because of where they lead to the North Sea ports. And whoever controls those waters controls the movement between East and West." With that, he left her alone in the drawing room, the brass key warm in her palm, the broken glass glittering like stars across the floor. The echo of his footsteps faded, replaced by the soft, distant sound of Elizabeth's laughter, counterpointed by Sebastian's heavier tread, or perhaps Helena's memory. Guiding or warning, Sonya couldn't tell. In the darkness of Elizabeth's bedroom, Sonya sat at the window seat, watching clouds scuttle across the moon. The brass key lay heavy in her palm, her mother's pendant a counterweight against her chest. Two artifacts, two pathways, two impossible choices. Who am I now? She wondered, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. the bookseller from Harrison and Sons who orders inventory and helps customers find the perfect novel on Saturdays, who visits her mother's grave on Sundays, or something else entirely, the daughter of railway legacies and Cold War secrets? Sullivan's words echoed in her mind, a true player in this game, not merely someone else's piece. Was that freedom or another kind of manipulation? In the 3 weeks since she'd stepped off the ship onto English soil, certainties had dissolved like sugar in rain. Uncle Gregory, a stranger who'd summoned her across an ocean, only to use her as bait. Morrison, possibly her father, possibly her enemy. Sullivan. Sullivan was something else entirely. Brilliant, dangerous, broken. She'd seen the fractures in his composure, the way he seemed to inhabit multiple realities simultaneously. And yet, there was truth in his fury, clarity in his madness. He moved with purpose, even if that purpose existed in a reality slightly adjacent to her own. Is this what happens when you stay too long in Whispering Pines? Sonya wondered, her gaze drifting to the shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. Does the house reshape your mind until the impossible becomes reasonable, until ghosts become advisors, until meeting a mysterious North Sea shipping magnate sounds like a sensible next step? Perhaps she was already halfway to Sullivan's particular madness. After all, she too had heard the laughter, felt Elizabeth's presence, sensed Helena lingering in corners of rooms she'd once inhabited. Sonya closed her fingers around the key. East or west? Truth or safety? Morrison's world of surveillance and control, or Sullivan's realm of brilliant chaos? She thought of the bookstore in New York, dust motes dancing between shelves in afternoon sunlight, the orderly progression of days arranging displays and recommending novels to regular customers. She could return to that life. Morrison would ensure it. She could pretend the last 3 weeks had been a strange dream, file away her mother's secrets in some mental drawer labeled "Never Open." 25 years of Helena's silence suddenly made perfect sense. But the other path, the path with Sullivan beyond the curtain into territories where Western rules dissolved, that path promised no safety, no certainty, just answers, and perhaps something else. In Sullivan's fractured brilliance, in his absolute commitment to his twisted vision, there was a strange freedom. The freedom of abandoning conventional sanity, of seeing the world not as it pretended to be, but as it truly was. Dangerous, complex, magical in its connections. Mother made her choice when she fled to America, Sonya thought. She chose safety over truth. Can I make the opposite choice? Can I step into the madness and remain myself? Outside, a nightingale began to sing, its melody weaving through the Yorkshire darkness. Nightingale, the code word Sullivan had spoken into the radio. Was it a coincidence or another message from the house itself? Sonya ran her thumb over the brass key's teeth. By morning, she would need to decide, remain a pawn on the board, or risk becoming something altogether more dangerous. By morning, she would need to decide if she could trust a man who spoke to ghosts and played both sides of the Cold War like a virtuoso. By morning, she would need to decide if the price of truth was her sanity.